I'm Ava, married for 2 years, happily living with my kind husband. Despite our closeness, we hadn't yet welcomed children, eagerly anticipating the day when we would. However, everything changed after the accident. My husband was not only kind to me, but also to everyone around him, earning adoration from my parents. Even my career-focused sister, who was solely interested in work, got along well with him. Suddenly, his work became overwhelmingly busy. He started coming home late and working on his days off. It appeared he had been put in charge of a team, refusing to let go of his cell phone as he maintained constant communication. In hindsight, people might have found this suspicious, but I didn't harbor any doubts. Instead, I worried about my husband's health. Eventually, my sister, who lived alone in her apartment, decided to move out due to a new job. Wanting to find furniture for her new home, I planned to take her shopping in my car on a Monday, her only day off. However, my boss called, requiring me to go to the office. As I pondered what to do, I realized that, coincidentally, my husband also had the day off. Lately, my husband had been occupied with work, but I mustered the courage to ask him for a favor. Understanding my predicament, he graciously agreed, saying, "Along with your sister, it's a bit awkward, but it's all right. My car is being repaired, so can I borrow yours?" Grateful for his offer, I lent him my car, allowing me to address the issues at my office. It marked the first time my husband and sister went out alone together. I found myself wondering how they were doing, whether they had found suitable furniture, and more. Once I resolved the problems at work, the evening had set in. I took out my cell phone to coordinate dinner plans with my husband and sister. However, as I answered a call from an unknown number, the voice on the other end identified himself as a police officer. My heart sank as he informed me that my husband had been involved in an accident, rendering both him and his female passenger unconscious. The details blurred, but I vividly recall rushing to the hospital upon receiving the distressing news. I provided my name to the emergency receptionist and was directed to the ICU. Through the glass window, I saw my husband connected to various tubes and wrapped in bandages, fostering anxiety about his condition. My mother, who lived far away, arrived, and together we spent an uneasy night. In the midst of our worry, the police shared details about the accident. According to them, Ethan was driving on a road with clear visibility when a car ran a red light, colliding with him. The other driver, also seriously injured, was being treated at the same hospital. However, the driver claimed Leo's car had been acting strangely before the accident, leading the police to investigate the possibility of him falling asleep at the wheel. Within 3 days, both my husband and sister regained consciousness, undergoing tests. The doctors later briefed my mother and me on the results, revealing that while they wouldn't succumb to their injuries, some form of disability was likely. Despite this, my mother and I were relieved that they were alive and optimistic about their recovery through rehabilitation. We chose not to disclose the possibility of disabilities to them. My mother and I opted for a positive approach, caring for both my sister and husband. While my mother attended to my sister, I took on the responsibility of looking after my husband. Initially, the accident left my husband in a state of shock, physically and emotionally unwell. He expressed concern about the inconvenience he caused to me, my mother, and my sister. However, with time, the kind demeanor he once had began to transform. Frustration set in as he grappled with his immobile leg, hospital treatments, and the necessity to resign from his job, all taking a toll on his nerves. Despite the challenges, I continued visiting the hospital, understanding his feelings and wanting to offer support. One day, a police detective arrived at the hospital, revealing new information about the accident. Apparently, brake oil in my car had leaked, posing a potential risk even before the accident. This might explain the strange behavior of the car leading up to the collision. The woman who collided with my car was also not faring well. Her mother came to apologize. It was my first meeting with her, and from that point on, I sensed an escalation in my husband's resentment towards me. He harbored resentment towards me, fueled by frustration over his immobility compared to my ability to move freely. Furthermore, my limited time at the hospital due to work commitments seemed to aggravate him. His dissatisfaction manifested in constant orders, expressions of anger when his demands weren't met, and even throwing objects at me. Complaints about his hospital room escalated, reaching a point where he expressed discontent when I went out to purchase my lunch. The demands intensified, making it increasingly challenging for me to balance my responsibilities. While I sympathized with his situation, I needed to work to sustain our livelihood. My obligations extended to liaising with the police and coordinating with the hospital, leaving me with little time to attend to my own needs. My husband's attitude became unbearable, pushing me into a corner where I felt trapped. Simultaneously, my sister and mother experienced similar strains, with my sister's demands on our mother escalating when I couldn't be at the hospital. Both my husband and sister seemed to internalize the belief that rehabilitation wouldn't alleviate their paralysis. Adding to the complexity of the situation was the revelation about my car's brake oil leakage, a factor contributing to the accident. The weight of these challenges left me feeling overwhelmed and trapped in a relentless cycle of responsibilities and strained relationships. My sister confronted me, stating that I was responsible for the car's oil leakage, emphasizing that I neglected its maintenance. She asserted that her inability to work and recover, along with our mother's frustration and my husband's shared condition, were all consequences of my negligence. According to her, I was now obligated to care for both her and my husband indefinitely. The intensity of my sister's blame caught me off guard, prompting me to reach out to my mother for clarification. To my surprise, my mother revealed that my sister had been struggling with this mental state for an extended period, contributing to her accusations. Despite my mother's fatigue, she expressed concern for my husband, which compelled me to visit the hospital. Upon arrival, I discovered that my husband wasn't in his hospital room, but instead in the common area with my sister. As visiting hours neared their end, the two sat alone in the otherwise deserted room. Upon my inquiry, my husband directed his glare at me, asserting that if I had taken the car for inspection, the entire ordeal might have been avoided. He held me responsible for the predicament they were in, arguing that while insurance might cover some aspects, I was obligated to care for them for the rest of our lives. Upon hearing those words, something inside me snapped. My husband and my sister, seemingly aligned against me, asserted their dependency on my care due to their shared physical limitations. I couldn't comprehend why they were suddenly so close, especially considering the infrequency of my visits. Attempting to unravel the situation, I sarcastically pointed out that they hadn't seen each other much before the accident. My husband avoided the question, while my sister, though not making eye contact, affirmed her commitment to caring for them both indefinitely. Despite the lack of expected answers, I persisted, hoping to convey my emotions. Inquiring about the well-being of the person whose car hit them, I received dismissive responses about her running a red light and the need for compensation. Feeling overwhelmed by their complaints, I contemplated revealing the truth, sensing that it was time for them to understand my perspective. What? First of all, I had my car inspected before the accident. If there's an issue, the dealer should be sued. There's no way they didn't know the brake oil was leaking. I know, right? So right after the accident, the police called me. They wanted to know the cause and asked if they could check my drive recorder. But that old one doesn't record any sound, and it starts recording only after the accident. So, it's useless. I see, it's just like I thought. You didn't know that I had gotten a new drive recorder. My sister looked up in surprise. I also installed another camera for the inside of the car. Her face grew paler and paler. You know, modern drive recorders can start recording with even a slight shake of the car. The police contacted me and they said they had seen the data. My husband looked confused, and my sister seemed so pale that she almost collapsed. You were up to something, correct? I confronted her. What? Do you mean you did something to the car? My husband was panicking. Oh, do you address my sister like that? You talk to her as if she were your girlfriend. Oh, my husband stopped talking, apparently in panic. I told you earlier that a slight vibration would start the recording, and so many intimate scenes between the three of you were recorded. I was so embarrassed when the police asked me if it's my sister who was in the car with my husband. The blood drained from my husband's face. You guys had been having an affair all this time. You had been completely fooled. Not knowing what to do, my husband started blaming my sister. Amelia isn't the only one at fault here. At that moment, the mother of the woman who had crashed into my car came to the hospital room. I had asked her to come over. Don't you have anything to say to her? My sister was taken aback by the sudden appearance of the solemn woman. Whoa, who's this? She's the mother of the woman who crashed into you. She should be the one paying for all this. Surprised by the woman's tears, my husband stopped talking. She's the mother of the woman who crashed into you. She's also the mother of the woman who was your victim. Her name is Luna. I'm certain you're familiar with her. Upon hearing the woman's name, my husband visibly paled, causing my sister to panic. She inquired about the woman's identity, specifically asking if we knew her and her connection to the car accident. It became apparent that they were aware it was our car she crashed into. Desperate for information, my husband, seemingly at a loss, pressed for details about the mysterious woman who was driving. Taking a deep breath, I decided it was time to disclose the unsettling truth to my sister. It turned out that she had been involved in an affair with a man named Leo. He had promised her a divorce but failed to follow through. When Luna, my sister, lied about being pregnant with his child, Leo insisted on an abortion, severing their connection. Following this, Luna found herself unable to reach Ethan and harbored a desire for revenge against me. My sister processed the revelation, realizing that I had unwittingly become entangled in a web of deceit. As the gravity of the situation dawned on her, she expressed disbelief at how something like this could profoundly impact our lives. I comforted her, acknowledging the unfortunate reality that there was little we could do to change the situation. I emphasized that no amount of crying or screaming could alter the course of events. As the conversation unfolded, it became clear that the incident wasn't a random misfortune but a result of calculated actions. I explained that, in addition to Luna's betrayal, there was another layer to the deception. It turned out that Amelia, too, had been involved in an affair behind my back. Shockingly, she had attempted to cause me harm by tampering with the brake oil of my car. However, her sinister plan backfired when she ended up in the very accident she orchestrated. I find myself in the role of the victim in this situation. Despite my initial intention to avoid divorce if you apologized and shared your thoughts with me during your hospitalization, I received no indication of remorse from you. On the contrary, you treated me poorly. Recall how, right after our marriage, we drafted divorce papers. Back then, I never anticipated needing them. But today, I officially submitted those papers. As a result, we are no longer married. Goodbye. After expressing everything I needed to say, I found solace in the dark and quiet hospital environment. Releasing the resentment that had been bottled up inside me made me feel free. However, my mother was profoundly shocked upon learning the truth. The revelation of not only my sister's infidelity, but also the added responsibility of caring for her physically disabled daughter, weighed heavily on her. She now faces the daunting task of shouldering this burden alone. I have severed ties with both Leo and Amelia, yet I couldn't abandon my responsibility towards my mother, who was left to manage everything on her own. I engaged in a conversation with the person responsible for the accident, offering sincere apologies and urging her to compensate my sister, who was mistakenly involved in the incident. My primary concern was to alleviate any additional burden on my mother. It has been a year since those events unfolded. My husband and I are now divorced, and I am living independently. At the time, Leo and I were perceived as a close couple, so the divorce caught my coworkers by surprise. Subsequently, more people, like Mung, sought my advice, perhaps due to the allure that divorced women seemingly hold for men during such phases. Despite the lingering image of my ex-husband in my mind, I hesitated to enter the dating scene. Instead, I dedicated my efforts to studying for a certification exam to enhance my career prospects. I even enrolled in an online business school, a pursuit I hadn't considered during my marriage. The shift towards this new direction seemed natural, contrasting my previous indifference towards a career-focused life. Life, I realized, is unpredictable. In the meantime, my ex-husband returned to his parents' house, where he is perceived as a burden. His family and relatives blamed him for his past actions and mistreatment towards me. I've heard reports of his struggling mental health and disruptive, violent behavior causing distress to those around him. My sister also returned to our parents' house, but unfortunately, she struggled with mental illness and continued to display egotistical behavior. Recognizing the severity of her condition, my mother, already exhausted from caring for her, utilized my sister's savings and the accident compensation to provide her with the necessary care and accommodations at home. Although my mother consulted me about this decision, I had no reason to oppose it and gave her my approval. Little did I realize, had I not intervened at that moment, I might have found myself in a perpetual role as a slave to both my sister and mother for the rest of my life. The gravity of that potential outcome escaped my consideration at the time. Fortunately, I successfully passed the certification exam I had aspired to, leading to a transfer to a department where I could utilize my skills to their fullest potential. During this time, I developed a close relationship with the teacher who managed the online business school. Soon, we found ourselves on the path to marriage. What distinguishes our connection is not just his general kindness to everyone, but his profound kindness specifically directed towards me. Whenever I return home late from work, he ensures to be back early, preparing dinner for both of us. I hold on to these small yet meaningful moments of happiness, treasuring them like the wishes I send upon the stars. As I hurriedly make my way home, I am filled with anticipation to be reunited with my partner, who patiently waits for me.